Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Women in Technology Spotlight. Today, I have with me Dr. Dora Dzvonyar. She is a science and tech communicator. Welcome, Dora.
Hi, glad to be here.
Thank you, Dora, for giving me your time and talking to me. Let's just start off with a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
Sure. Well, I don't know how to describe myself in a couple sentences. I am from Hungary originally, but I grew up here in Bavaria near Munich, and I studied computer science. I always knew that that's what I wanted to do. I then went on and got my PhD as well, which I never thought I wanted to do, but it was really fun for me. I can talk about that a little bit later if you want. Yeah, and apart from that, I now work in science communication, which kind of, led everything that I did kind of led me here. And yeah, I live in Munich. When I'm not working, which is quite rare at this point, I really like to go climbing. I love to do improv theater. I'm also a TEDx organizer, which is the local independently organized format of TED Talks that many might know. So I co-founded TEDx TUM in Munich here at TUM. And yeah, I live in Munich with my cat, who might be jumping in the picture at some point later, but she's sleeping now.
So cool. So especially about the TEDx, I will ask a couple of questions about that later. So first, you said you're from Hungary initially. Did you come to Bavaria to study, or did your family move here?
No, I grew up here. So I was 6 when we moved to Germany, and I started school here in Germany. So I think probably for most people, I would count as German. It's just that I speak an additional language. Maybe it's a bit easier for me to learn foreign languages, or at least it used to be when I was a bit younger. And and I got a bit of maybe added culture, added perspective on some topics, but otherwise consider me German, I think.
Okay, so you already talked about school. So you went to school in Germany. Tell me a little bit about your education. So what kind of school did you go to? How did you become interested in your technical career into studying computer science? And
yeah, so I went to, I think it's called secondary school. It's like a gymnasium, basically, in German. And I kind of always knew that I wanted to do something with computer science. And my dad is a computer scientist, so we had a computer at home even in the 90s when I was little, and that wasn't, the usual thing, at least not in Hungary. Not every household had a computer with an internet connection later on. And yeah, so I think this was kind of my role model in a way. But that was kind of my role model in a way. And I never really thought about doing something else. There was a brief period in which I wanted to become a cat psychologist, but I kind of went away really quickly, probably luckily so, because I wouldn't be this fulfilled, I think. Yeah, and then I went on to study at TUM here in Munich. And I did my bachelor's and master's in information systems, which is about 70% computer science, 30% business stuff, which was kind of nice. And I really enjoyed it. So just a kind of formal education that I have.
Okay, so that's interesting. You said your dad was your role model, and it's you're one of the few women I've talked to in this series who have actually wanted to become a computer science or work with tech from a young age. So most women I talked to came to tech at a later point in time. So tell me a little bit about how that played out. Your father being a computer scientist, did he talk to you a lot about what he did, or did you find it fascinating, or what was the appeal of computers when you were young?
Yeah, so I don't remember exactly. I might be building these memories, to justify kind of my points. But the way I remember it is that we talked a lot. Like I used to sit in his lab and play, memory, this very old gray tiled memory game. And I think it was Space Invaders, something with a rocket ship. So I was really interested in it. And I think my parents, they never discouraged me in a way. I don't remember either being encouraged or discouraged. They were just like, do whatever you're interested in. There wasn't also, like back then, there weren't like courses or anything where you would, send your kids. So I think I did most of that at home. But, you know, when I got to university, so I taught myself a bit of PHP at home, and I did a lot of like photo manipulation, Photoshop stuff, you know. Back then it was all the rage, really, and I taught myself all that. And I think I had a kind of decent first grasp of object-oriented concepts as well by the time that I got to uni, but it was horrible. Like the first months, everybody was like, you know, sitting around me was like already so proficient in everything. And I was there at like this beginner Java course. And I thought, you know, I had already gotten started before that, but it was just, I just felt like the biggest beginner there. So it was really, really hard. To be honest. I think I got over it quickly. At least I don't have that many bad memories, but I remember in the first like semester or so being very overwhelmed, especially, you know, by these people, mostly male, sitting like near you who have been gaming and programming their whole lives. And I just felt like so out of place, in a way, but that got better.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think that's what a lot of us experience, that when we come into this environments, that we have this phase where we feel a little bit out of place if we haven't been, you know, doing the same stuff and been in the same circles for a long time.
Yeah, and especially I knew that this is what I wanted to do, right? If I hadn't been really, really sure, it would have been even harder. So I guess, you know, if somebody else feels this way, which I'm sure many do, just stick with it. It will become easier. And since then, you know, I've watched hundreds of students go through this phase and get better. So it really works out if you just don't quit.
Yeah. So after you did your master's, you decided to do your PhD as well. And you said earlier that you never thought you would be doing that. So what changed your mind to stay at university?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that people who do their PhD are crazy. Basically, I couldn't think of a single reason why anybody would want to subject themselves to it, at least not in computer science, you know, because there's all this other cool stuff that you can do, like work as a consultant or work in industry or, you know, whatever. Back then, I was really into automotive and I wanted to become an IT consultant. But then I got in contact with this really cool chair that doesn't exist anymore. It's the Professor Brugge's chair, which used to exist at Home for Applied Software Engineering. And I got to meet a lot of people. I started as a TA there. So student assistant, basically in this very applied course for learning iOS development. So we work with clients from industry. Per semester, we had like 100 students, 10 to 12 projects, each with a client from industry like Siemens or BMW. And, you know, using this kind of real world problem, we would teach them in small teams how to program a mobile application for iOS. And I loved it. And I really loved being able to teach in my chosen field, you know, which I think you don't get many chances for that. So I decided to exist there for the next couple of years. And for me, the title itself was always, I don't want to say bonus because it still was a lot of work, but let's say that, you know, I would have been fine walking out of there without the title, just having taught for 5 years and having had really a lot of fun and having seen a lot of different applications of technology and a lot of different types of people, students learning and approaching the problems. That would have been fine. So this was the motivation for my PhD, and I got a title out of it in the end.
I just want to interject something quickly for those viewers who are not from Germany and not especially from Bavaria. That TUM is the Technical University in Munich. So it's just, you know, this little abbreviation, and we both know what it is. So just to make sure that everyone knows what university we're actually talking about. And what I realized when you talked about how you worked with the students and the teaching, that this was already a lot about communicating science, right? And tech. So this is something you're obviously very passionate about, because you just said you would have been fine walking out of there even without your PhD title, just for the benefit of having been able to teach people about technology. Tell me a little bit about that side of your...
Yeah. It's funny that you say that, because I think this was exactly the effect. Again, I might be, you know, building these steps in between. It didn't feel like it was one step after the other at the time, but just, you know, now looking back, it does. I mean, one of the favorite parts of the course was kind of teaching them to present often very technical details like algorithms, the way that an algorithm works, machine learning algorithm, for example, in like playful ways. So it sounds a bit childish when I explain it, but I don't think it was, most of the time at least. So they would like think of small theater scenes or plays to act it out, really either a user in context or a problem being experienced and how the app helps, or even an algorithm, like the different steps of an algorithm, just acted out in a kind of playful way. And just kind of teaching the students to appreciate breaking down really complex technical things so that everybody would understand them and also start to care, about the problem or a problem that's being addressed here. That was really fun for me always. And this is also around the time that I got into TEDx, and we founded TEDx TUM or TUM. And there, I got to work with a lot of different speakers who are often scientists that are very, very renowned in their fields, and they have all these titles and prizes, but they're often really self-conscious about talking to people who are not from their field. And they also don't think that their work really counts in the real world. You know what I mean?
I can relate to that as well, because what I learned, I have a PhD in chemistry actually, and I work in tech, and what I have noticed, and I don't know if that's something that's very common in the German speaking area, is that there are a lot of very bad presenters. So we have an issue presenting technology or topics in a way that people can relate to them. So It's interesting that you said you taught your students to actually act out the steps of a solution or of an algorithm. That's such an interesting approach. How did you think of that? Is that something that came from your improv theater interest, or was it the other way around that got you into improv theater?
So this wasn't my idea. It was a technique that my professor invented that he called software theater, because it's theater about software in this case. I also don't think it's something that I would recommend, to use in every life situation. It's just, going through that, and this being such an extreme example, they kind of got to add it to their kind of arsenal of like tools, basically. So there's not only one way to present a problem. Improv theater is something else. I just really like, after the end of a really stressful day, or just a day where we're thinking inside of boxes and we're super structured, that you get into a context where anything is possible as long as you believe in it and as long as you commit to it, and kind of taking this not being able to plan any step further because you have to wait for a reaction of somebody else and then just roll with it. That I find really nice, but it's different from my work career, I would say.
Yeah, it just reminded me of that you said you were into improv theater, and I was thinking about how this teaching method had a lot of creativity, because when you look at tech and science from the outside, it's often very dry. That's the picture that people have in their head, and the way you talk about it and the way you taught it makes it come more alive. So I think this is an important topic to talk about, how we communicate science and technology, actually. So I think you're the perfect person to talk to this, actually, because obviously this is something you do. And tell me a little bit why you do this, and what it means to you, teaching or talking about science and tech.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, playfulness is very, very important, even if you don't, if it doesn't end up being in your end product, because you're doing a very businessy presentation or something where you have to be, 100% inside the box. It's still good that you have it inside of you and that you maybe play around with it and try it out. Why I care so much about it, I think, I don't know. It's the moment that's best for me is when a person kind of realizes that what they just said sounds good to somebody else, but they wouldn't have believed it before. So it's like, that actually sounds really nice, and it's understandable, and it's exactly what is kind of like in my head, but now I got it out. And this makes people from all age groups, backgrounds, genders equally just happy. And I really like experiencing that, and having or knowing that I was kind of part of it, part of getting them there. That's really cool. And I think it's empowerment mostly, this kind of feeling that you're like, oh, I didn't know that I was able to do that or say it that way, but I am, and it's really cool. So I really love that.
It's interesting that you used the term empowerment, because it just reminded me that communication is this form of power if you do it right. No?
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
So coming back to the whole way we communicate tech and science, I think it's very important that this changes, because I think one of the reasons there are not that many women in tech or in science is the way tech and science are communicated at societal level and also at university often. So there's a lot, as I said, there are a lot of bad presenters, and my experience is that there's also a lot of bad teachers, you know. So changing the way we communicate about these topics that are so important for our society nowadays is a big, big thing.
Yeah, and you know, what's often happens is that the people who are doing the work are not necessarily the ones communicating it. So there is like, if you know, the pandemic is an obvious example to take, but there's lots of others. But if you have the scientists or, the technical people on one side and the media, press, general public on the other side, it doesn't really make sense to add somebody in between, because it will just not be the same. And what also happens, like the cliche way that happens, I think in organizations, of course, it's not this way everywhere. And I do think it's getting better. But what you do see often is that the scientists or people doing the work, as well as the bosses, are men. And then you have women in the communications department. And I really don't like that. This should be, all mixed up and one thing. And the people doing the work should also communicate it.
I think I agree. And I think that's because we have a very traditional split of roles here. A lot of people think that women are much better at communication, and that's usually true. But then there's the other notion that men are better at tech and science, which is not necessarily true. So I think what we would like is to make women more confident in going into tech and science themselves, and making men more capable of communicating what they're doing. So this would be the perfect scenario, I think.
Yeah, both more capable, as well as make them both of these make them care more and also believe more that their talents or their skills are well served in that area. Like as a tech person, and I've seen this with a lot of students who are like, what are you on about? Like this, this theater thing. I don't know. I want to code, preferably alone. So leave me alone with all your soft stuff, whatever. And then, kind of getting them. It didn't work with everybody. I'm not saying that after that they were like, okay, software theater, I'll never do anything else in my entire life. But they did, most of them did kind of see that this can be useful, even the, most removed, very traditional techie types.
Yeah.
But just to kind of, as I said, add it to their kind of arsenal of tools that they don't have to use, but they can when they feel that they need it.
Yeah. This is a topic I'm very passionate about, and I talk about it often because I feel that, especially even in the tech field, there's still this notion that you are maybe a programmer, you sit in a dark room, you work for yourself, and then there's an end product. But it's not like that anymore. No. If you look at the way the tech space is organized, you need people who are capable of working in teams. So you need people who are capable of communicating, and not just with other programmers. They have to be able to communicate with people with different skill sets. And so it's so important that they actually learn this while they're still at university. And of course, software theater is a very specific thing, but the whole topic around presentation skills, communication skills is something that I feel has to be brought into the universities. It's really the curriculum is really lacking these things.
Yeah, and people won't learn, presentation skills or communication skills just through theory. I think it works best when they get to communicate something that they already care about.
Yeah.
And that's what they worked on, is usually what they care about. So they want people to understand, and you can learn that much better this way. And sorry, just one additional point to what you just said about about tech people being able or having to be able to communicate with other non-tech people. This is also what I love about tech, that you get to be useful and create value and solve problems in fields that you have no idea about. Like we did a project together with a hospital here in Munich, where we kind of helped the stroke unit to see where they're losing time with stroke patients that come in, because when you have a stroke, time is very precious. And we kind of devised a system that enabled them to do this, to kind of see where they're losing time without adapting their workflow. This was very important. So without having to change anything of what they do. And we didn't know about anything about, how to treat a stroke or we didn't have any medical knowledge, but we still, by communicating with them and understanding what they need and what's important, we still got to create value and real value in this different field that we have no idea about. And this is something that I really, really love about tech in general.
Yeah, this reminds me of design thinking course that I did recently, and that's actually one of the things that you try to do when you do design thinking. You talk to the people you are designing your solution for, and this means again that you have to be able to emphatically listen and communicate and watch what they do, to understand how they do it and what they actually need in terms of a solution. So there's so many what we erroneously call soft skills in tech nowadays. And I think that is a result of tech becoming part of mainstream life. It didn't used to be like that in the early 90s or even in the 80s, but nowadays I think there is no area in the world that is not touched in some form by digitalization. So all these people who used to be in their own field doing stuff in tech and who didn't have any intersection with real life now have to move into this real life that we're living in, or everyone is living in.
Definitely.
So, yeah. So there's another thing you do. I think you also work as a coach, right? I think I saw that on your profile, like you're doing business coaching, or is that something I'm remembering wrong?
Yeah, no, I am speaker coaching basically.
Oh yeah, speaker
and this
coaching,
and this came out of this whole volunteer effort at TEDx TUM. So I worked over years. I worked with speakers, mostly scientists, not only scientists, from different fields. And I got into this as a volunteer, right? So TEDx is a volunteer endeavor. You don't get any money for it. You also don't pay for it. It's just, you do it because you care about you spreading ideas. And here at TUM, we have so many ideas that we felt needed spreading. So we founded it. And I work with a lot of speakers, around 10 to 15 per year, sometimes more, over months and months, kind of distilling what was in their head into a short form talk. That's very high stakes also, like TED Talks are very intense. And it was a very personal process. And to be honest, I think I got into it because nobody else on the team wanted to do it at the time. And we were so few that I was like, okay, I'll do it. And then I got so much, like over the years, people kept telling me, thank you, like what you said back then really helped me, or this process really, and they kept, making these comments about me and my contribution. And the first 20, I probably brushed off and didn't even notice. But after a while, like this was a repeating thing. And I was like, okay, I seem to be good at this. I seem to be able to help these people, and I am also having fun doing it. So why not continue doing it? So I'm also a freelance speaker coach right now, not that much because I don't have much, free time next to my full-time job, which is also now in science communication. So this was kind of the road to me discovering something that I was good at and that I really enjoyed, which I wouldn't have discovered otherwise. Absolutely not. Because, how would you? And this kind of, this coaching students in a way, especially in communicating technological things, as well as coaching scientists for these short form talks, and then discovering that I seem to have like both a liking for it, as well as kind of a talent, if you can call it that, for it. And I have fun doing it. So this is where I stayed, kind of.
And I can feel that you're very passionate about what you do and you're really at home in this world you have created. And I love that. And I find it very interesting because you are in tech on the one side, but on the other hand, it's not at all what people imagine tech to be, you know. So it's a very outgoing, very communicative and very creative space that you have created for yourself or found for yourself in tech. And if you think back over the years you have been in tech, would you say that there is room for anyone or even women to create their space in tech? Is that something you would maybe recommend women to do, to come and follow their dream? You know, there's a lot of reluctance in some women to come into this space. So do you feel that there is room to create your own thing?
Of course, there's room for anyone, anywhere. honestly, really. Like, I mean, you said even women. I really don't think that it's, you know, the talent is dependent on gender at all. You know, how much you're drawn to it by your kind of social conditioning is definitely, you know, dependent not on the gender, but on how we grew up or grow up in this world, as well as your likelihood of staying, of finding kind of your, you know, place where you feel at home and you feel like you could exist for a long while. Those are the problems, but the talent is there, definitely, of course.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that wholeheartedly, and this is my opinion. I just want to have it said out in the open.
Yeah, of course, I'll say it. I'll say it as many times as you want.
Yes,
but I think also, like, in my, like what I just said about how I got here, I wouldn't have believed that I can do what I'm doing now. And I just discovered it because I did it. And I did it because it was needed at the time. You know, so I was like, I don't know, I'll do this. And then I was good at it. So I think if somebody's unsure, male or female, you know, whether there is a place for you in tech, talk to people, look for a place, try it out. You know, there's all these different kinds of kind of low threshold ways. You don't have to, you know, quit your job and, you know, take any job in tech to find that out. There's other ways of doing that through clubs, hobbies, volunteering, you know, work placements or shadowing people, all that. Just try it, get a taste of it.
That's perfect. And it's also the perfect ending, because my last question would have been, what do you recommend to women who are interested into coming to this space? And I think those are the things that you would recommend. Try out stuff that you're interested in. You know, there's so much nowadays that's available. As you said, clubs, there's online courses, there's all these things. And there, I think, are also quite a lot of networks, women's networks who are in this space that will support you, and talking to people. Networking is also a big thing, right?
Yeah, and definitely, because, you know, you wouldn't say, you know, art is not for me because you went to a museum once and you didn't like it. So just because you have seen one job in tech or have been in one job in tech that you don't like, it doesn't mean that it's not for you. I think we're kind of conditioned to think that because we also already feel like, you know, we don't belong, on average at least, but you know, it's so that it's like one of the most diverse fields. I mean, come on, there's, you know, there has to be something that is fun and that you enjoy. In addition, I think I would recommend kind of taking maybe a step back and thinking about the skills that you have, not in terms of, you know, what am I really good at? There might be things that you're really good at, those, yes, for sure, but also like, what do I really enjoy? Because you're likely already good at it, even though if you wouldn't, you know, consider yourself good at it. So just go by also what others tell you. As well as kind of what you would like to do in the future, and taking this kind of abstract look, like where could the skills be applied, gives you a much maybe easier way to relate to a position that is maybe in tech, maybe somewhere else, but it doesn't, you know, you don't say, okay, I want to be in tech, but you say, I want to apply these skills. Where can I apply those? In tech for sure, somewhere, also in other places, but it doesn't, I feel it gives kind of less of this fear of, this is something technical, I don't know, because you're already going by what you either want to do or are able to do well.
This is such a good point, you know, looking at what you enjoy doing, because I think we all underestimate how important it is to have fun in what you're doing and how good you can get when you have fun.
Yeah, and how dedicated you'll be to get even better and to kind of stick with it. So
yeah, thank you. That's such a good message to end this interview. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your story with us. It was a great pleasure talking to you.
sure, thank you so much for having me.